Welcome back to King's Customs. In this episode, we're going to start some rust repair on the 56 Ford. We're going to use a flux core welder to do all of our rust repair on the sheet metal. And
I want to take care of all that. So I'm gonna. I can get replacement panels. I just don't want to. I don't think it'll be that bad to just do it piece by piece. So that's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna cut it all out, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna do piece by piece. We'll make a template of whatever piece we need, and we'll weld it in, and hopefully when we're all done, it'll look right. The fender covers a lot of it once the fender's on there, so you really won't have but maybe an inch or so between the door and the fender, the door gap in the fender. So that's what this video is going to be about. I am going to use this little Harbor Freight flux core welder. I know a lot of people, I know a lot of people don't care for them. They have their general purpose, but I'm gonna try and do it. I'm gonna try and show you a way to do it the most cheapest way possible. And not a lot of people can afford a expensive welder. I know MIG welders and TIG welders, they can tend to get pretty expensive. So I've had this welder for years. It's been a good little welder for what I've used it for, so I decided that's what I'm going to use it for. I've done sheet metal work with it before, so I'm pretty confident that it'll work out okay. I am using the smallest wire that you can use on it, which is I believe it's 30 thousandths. So as you can see, I've got some reference lines marked of kind of where I'm going to cut it out at, and sometimes it's easier to not cut it all out and get you a panel made to replace it and make sure it fits before you cut it out. But I think the best thing to do is going to be cut all that out, get it all out of the way, and then I'll just come back in piece by piece and I'll put it all back. I mean, you could do a cut and butt. That would be where you'd start cutting one out and then you'd tack weld it in, and then you'd finish cutting, and as you cut you would tack weld it in so it falls in place of what you're cutting out. But there's not enough there to really go that route, and I think it's going to be more of a hassle trying to leave that all there and figure my panels out. So I'm just going to go ahead real quick and I'm going to cut all that out and get it all cleaned up to where we got a fresh slate to start from. here's what I got. So what I'm going to do is I put this up here, and I mark my 2 lines for this bend here, this seam bend. Then I mark my top, and I mark where it needs to be notched. What I'm going to do here, this is going to 90-degree backwards, and it's going to lay right here. There was a couple little small holes right here, so I cut it out. Now all this, I'm not worried about this. I'll do all this when I do the main floor of the cab. Right now I'm just focusing on the rockers and the cab corners. So I'm going to get this cut and bent. So there's what we got. It's not perfect, but it's in there. So what I did, I had it all marked out. Cut what I didn't need over here. I put this little piece in the vise. And just knocked it over. Knocked it over flat, tapped it with a hammer so I get a crisp edge there. And then this bend here, I have this little piece of angle iron. I got it on my lines, just like so. I bend it down over that, past what it needed to be. Lay it back on the floor or flat surface, tap that seam, and it'll draw it back down. You just keep matching it to see where it needs to sit. Once it sits flush on your seam, you're good. So there's the first piece. We're going to do this piece first. Once this piece is in, we'll start piecing all the other smaller pieces in. So let me get all the edges cleaned up, ground up, and all that. Alright, so got a little carried away on the next piece. But I went ahead and got it in. It was rather simple. I took my fender and got this outer curve, and then just made this little template. Started with it bigger than what I needed. And then cut it down and burned it in. So don't pay attention to the globby welds. Once it's ground down, you'll never even see it. Next is the not so fun part. So we've got this lip here, and then we've got a little inner lip going this way. This is the little inner lip where the weather stripping would sit on the door. I'd say this is maybe an inch, and then maybe a half inch or so. And I'm gonna make this in two separate pieces. Reason being is I don't have a shrinker stretcher to do it in one piece and get my bend. So I'll cut this piece, measure and cut this piece, get it to fit, get it welded in, and then I'll cut this piece and I'll weld it in also. And once both of these are done, I can come over here and get this piece. Once this main piece is done, we'll do this back cap. Once I get this one and the two smaller pieces here done, what I'm probably going to do is I've got some sealer. I'm going to spray all of this on the back side, clean it up with a wire brush, and spray all of it in there really good to hopefully not have to worry about it again. But yeah, let me get some stuff measured. I believe this was about an inch, but I'm going to measure again to make sure, and then I'll get it measured out, and we'll get a piece cut, and I'll cut you back on, and we'll get it tacked in. I'll probably just tack it in for the most part, and then once we get this other small piece put on, then we will get them both welded in pretty solid. It's welding good, every bit of it. Flux core, gasless. It can be done. You just got to take your time. I did hit a couple little rust spots up here where I didn't go high enough, but I was trying to stay out of this area for the door hinge. It was on this outer lip, so it's maybe half the size of a number 2 pencil, but I just filled it in. We'll grind it down. If it needs a little more, we'll hit it with the welder again. But alright, alright. So here's the next piece. No curve to it yet. So what I'm probably gonna do is I'm gonna get it tacked up there real good, and then I'll work it into place as I tack it. This piece I'll probably just tack from the back side, just because you can see how right here this was actually a pinch weld or a spot weld, and instead of doing that extra lip here, because I don't have the right shrinker stretcher to do the right curvature, I'm not going to do that pinch weld. I'm just going to weld it straight in, and I'll work it in as I go down. It's longer than what it needs to be, so when I get to the bottom I can trim it off, kick it up in there, get it welded in, and then once I get that, I'm not going to bend this piece. I'll cut the angle into this piece, and I can stick it up there like so. Once both of those are in and burned in, the main front section here will do it next. Alright, so I've got that burned in there, tacked in there, and what I've done is right there roughly is my next piece. Probably going to cut it on the outsides of the lines, but what I did is I just stuck this up in here and I traced right up against the piece I just put. Then come back and drew my outer line down to where it's almost nothing at the end. So I'm going to cut this out real quick and then we'll get it burned in. And after that, it's the one big main piece and the front section for the wheel well. These three last pieces will knock it out. I get this next little piece on, I'll probably go ahead, clean up the inside, coat it with some sealer, and then I'll do this piece. I'll clean the back of it before I weld it in there. And then once I get it in here, I'll spray the inside of it again. And when this last cap piece, when I go to put it on, I'll clean the back of it and spray it and let it dry real good before I put it on and weld it. That way all of this on the inside has a nice good coat of sealer. Okay, so I've got that tacked in now. As you can see, I followed the contour as best as I can. You can always come back with a grinder if you want to cut it long. Come back with a grinder. Just take it down as best as you can. But when you get close down to the bottom, it's got to be a lot less of a lip than up top. And then all this will be cut off. I left it extra just so I knew I had it enough. So now I'm going to get a template made for this outer piece and we'll start. I'll give it a little bit of a roll. I may bend it over my leg or something, but I'll try to get it as close as I can to fitting the contour, and then we'll start getting it tacked in. Alright, so I've got that piece cut. Got it rolled and formed as best as I can. All I did was bend it over my leg some, take a hammer, lay it on the ground and beat it to get the curve into it a little better. It's held up there with some magnets right now. But I'm going to get that burned in, and once that piece is in, it'll actually start looking like a cab corner. And then we'll get that front piece there. Alright, so there's that piece. It's in, completely welded in. Back's been sprayed good. I meant to show that before I done that piece. And then I already have my next piece, back sprayed with sealer. And we're gonna burn it in right there. So let me get that done and we'll see what it looks like. May go ahead and grind everything down and get it all cleaned up. A little bit of metal trimmed off here and stuff. Okay, so there it is. I did do some grinding on it. There's just a couple small pinholes and stuff that I need to go back and hit again, and then I'll finish grinding it up. I haven't ground the top at all yet. I'll do that when I do the floor. There's no sense in doing all that whenever I'm going to be grinding in the same spot again also. So, but that's it. I'll come back later, and there where the lip rolls underneath the cab, I'll come back and put a piece in. So now to get started on the other side. I think it looks good though, and considering the welder I used. I think it looks really good. Got to do quite a bit left in this corner here. But yeah. Okay. So I just went ahead and finished that one off. Same process as the other side. One piece at a time. I will come back. This outer edge, outer lip on the bottom of the door, it has more rot than the other side did. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is just replacing the majority of all of it, all the way back. And I'll do that at a different time. But mainly, I wanted to get those front cab corners because it still had some droop and stuff where it didn't have enough support for the cab mounts. So the cab mount goes right under in the back lane. But yeah, turned out good. A lot better. A lot better. I'll have to come back. I believe the fender's got a hole that needs to go in down in this area somewhere. But yeah, both sides are done, cleaned up. Looks a lot better. Like I said, I still need to come back and fill in just a few pinholes here or there, do a little bit more grinding, mainly in the corners and stuff. I'm not too concerned about doing all that now because I still got to do the whole floor, and then the lip under the passenger side, and then I've got to do just a lip under the piece that I fixed here. This whole bottom corner was fine. There's the other cab mount where it goes right under. So yeah. Not sure where we'll head next in the next video. I'm thinking about trying to go ahead and get the bed figured out, get it mounted and figure out how I'm going to get it mounted. I do know that the rear fenders was setting higher than the fronts, so I want to try to get the bed figured out and mounted before I get the fenders put on. That way hopefully everything will be level, and it'll be a lot easier to get the fenders where they need to sit. I'm hoping it'll be rather simple. I do know that they just need to be dropped down on the bed a little bit. I almost wonder if that bed's not sitting a little too high. I don't know. I'm going to look into that. I do know on the other frame it was sitting a little lower, but that was also, the other frame was just a solid straight frame. The rear of this one sets up a little higher, and the center droops down, so that may have affected it a little bit. It don't look bad where it's sitting, but if it don't look right once the fenders is on it, I may try to lower the bed a little bit. I don't want to lose any bed space, but I want it to look right when it's done. So yeah, it's coming together. I do need to still get the old Ranger bumper off. The bolts are pretty rusty, so what I'm going to do is, being that I've got to cut the frame rails on the back, I'm just going to cut it all off, and we'll get that cut off and figured out once I get the bed on, so I know where I need to cut. Even if I got to take the bed back off to cut it once I get it figured out. Part of the spare tire rack will have to come off also. I don't necessarily plan on using that. It would be nice to have it, but if it's not and I end up getting rid of it. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah. I think I'm gonna call this a video, and not sure what we're gonna do next. Like I said, we may start trying to get the bed figured out and get it at least somewhat mounted. I don't want to just weld it to the frame. I want to make some tabs or something that comes off the frame and bolts it down. That way, if we do ever need to take it off, we don't have to be cutting welds and all that. That was the same with the front core support radiator. They originally had it welded to the frame, and I just made some brackets. I may need to come back in here and put some gussets to stiffen them up, but right now it's good and sturdy. The grill flops, but that's only because the fenders isn't on it. But I think it'll work. If I need to come back and make a gusset or come back and do maybe a plate off the bottom of the frame also to just tie it in, I'll do that. Yeah. There's still a lot of metal work to do. The whole drip rail is gone. We're going to get it done. I have found the drip rail kit. I'm just not sure if I want to go through the hassle of putting a drip rail back on it, or if I just want to shave the drip rail. I don't know. I'm going to think on that. And both of the doors have a good bit of rust at the bottoms. The hood has some rust, and the fenders are pretty rough, mostly in the area where the running board's mounted. It looks like they had been ripped off once or twice before, and they had been welded on. So they weren't the easiest to get off when I took them off. So I'm gonna probably redo all four fenders. The area where the running boards mount will probably get redone, and then I think both of them, the lower front corners on the front fenders are pretty rough. This one's got a big smack in it right there. The other one had a big dent down in this area. I think a couple of them had a little bit of rust. One's got a little there by the hood, and then one of them had, must be the other one, but right here on the front, on the eyebrow above the headlight area, there's a good sized rust hole. So we'll get all the rust holes fixed on the fenders. We'll beat down any dents that we can get beat out. I know there was a couple spots, it wasn't rust, the metal was tore. If I got to cut it out and fix it, I'll cut it out and fix it. If I can just weld it back together, I'll weld it back together. This was one of the rear fenders. That's where the running board mounted. It's terrible. This one actually had a bunch of Bondo plastic filler. I'm not going to say Bondo because I don't know if it was Bondo, but it had a bunch of plastic filler in this area. And I got a bunch of it off when I pulled the running board off, but that area is going to need a lot of attention. You can see where they've come in and welded a patch panel in before. So the rear fender, I don't know about both of them, but this one has had some work done to it. So yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Just hang with me, and we'll get some more content out. I'm gonna figure out where we're gonna head next. I'm not quite sure. There's so much to get done. I do want to get started on the floor inside the cab, but at the same time I kind of want to wait and figure out what drivetrain I'm going to use. I'd hate to have to cut down a trans tunnel after I've already built it and rebuild it again. So I'm still trying to figure out what drivetrain I'm going to use. I'm not quite sure. But once I get that figured out, we'll get started on the floor for sure. I mean, I could do some on the sides and get it worked up over the frame and worry about the trans tunnel area later. but I almost feel like it'd just be better to do it all at once and not have any issues later down the road. All right, I'm gonna call this a video. We'll see you in the next one. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. See you later.